Mills, I'd like to invite our speaker up twice. Because I believe in government reform. I want to make sure you get those 10,000 steps today. Brother Andre, please come and give us your message.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
So nice to be here. Many of you I've seen before many times. And so nice to see you again. As today we will be touching upon this important topic, what is mind-body connection. And all of you know pretty good what the body is. But the mind is a little more complex. In general, here in this context, we understand mind is just a reasoning capacity, which is closely connected to the brain, of course. Brain, which is part of the central nervous system, you know, your brain and the spinal cord. And all your body is connected to the central nervous system and is regulated by it. There are some parts that are more or less autonomous, like, for example, the digestive system. It has what's called the gut brain. It has a lot of neurons. And sometimes, don't you feel like the stomach has a mind of its own? It does, right? Well, but at the end of the day, they all are controlled by the central nervous system. They're all controlled by your brain. They're controlled by your they can be affected by your mind. That means by your reasoning. And that gives us kind of already an interesting motivation to actually look deeper into it and see. Well, we know that the body affects the mind. You know, when I'm sick, I don't think straight. You know, when I'm dehydrated, my mind is cloudy. And so forth, you can go on and on. And is there a reverse connection? Can I actually improve my function? Can I affect my body by just some changes in the thinking? Well, we can simplify the function of the mind, brain as it is the organ that generates desires, wishes, you know, your preferences, and also it basically controls, as we just mentioned, the internal, all this biochemistry in your body. So these are two very important functions that we saw can be actually affected. And we'll see it more. Or we suppose, so to say, that they can be connected. Well, let's see where we will end up. So your body responds to the way you think, feel, and act. As a definition, we can take that to start with the mind-body connection. We mentioned that there is a physiological effect and psychological effect. We know that, you know, this in common psychology, you know, you have the willpower. You know, the willpower regulates our behavior, and it's good when we can control our action and our desires by our higher mind. But unfortunately, often we are enslaved, and actually our mind dictates us what to do against our better reasoning and better judgments. So, and a good example would be addictions. Does anybody has at least one addiction? Don't raise your hands. Do you have at least one addiction that you think that the better reasoning is telling you, I better get this under control? Don't raise your hands. But most of the people out there, at least, they struggle at least with one addiction, maybe more than that. Okay? And so it regulates the 12 systems of our body. I won't go into all the details, and helps us actually resist the diseases. You know, sometimes children can actually order a disease. I remember a friend of mine, he used to say, well, you know, when I could order it, I could make myself sick. And then I would enjoy how my mom, she would just make cakes for me, and I would just enjoy TV, I would watch all day. I won't go to school, I would do anything again. He could order disease, and when he wouldn't want, he said, I would just say no, I would resist it, and disease would be over. So he did not allow it to develop just with the effort of the mind. Have you went through something like that? Have you ever resisted the disease? And just in the beginning you would say, no, I can't. I have really important appointment. I can't get sick. There is nobody to back me up. And guess what? And you actually go over it, and maybe you will drop after that. but you can actually get yourself going, at least for some time. Okay, so there is a thing called circadian, or there is a physiological phenomenon that is called circadian rhythm. We have many biological rhythms in our body. You know, your body, especially when it's on some sort of regular schedule, it will cooperate with you. It will remind you and prepare your body for digestion. You know, your digestive juices will be produced, or you will become sleepy at the right time, and you will wake up at the right time. It's called Dawn syndrome. You know, there's a whole interesting, intricate mechanism is involved for you to wake up fresh in the morning, ready to go for the day. And when it works just right, that's how you feel. And if it does not right, doesn't work right, then what? You don't want to get out of the bed. Just another minute, another 10 minutes, and so forth. So the mind is the main clock. It's the main clock, and it's important to regulate it. In fact, this rhythm can be so embedded in us that it can be shown on the example of an animal. And this is kind of a short children's story, you may say, within the presentation. There was a man by the name Nikolai, back in the Soviet Union days, where the communism was, and there was no tolerance to the religion. So thousands of people were executed, of all denominations. So, or sent to the concentration camps, where they would rarely would live alive. And so he was Seventh-day Adventist. He was sent to Siberia, to an area there is no trees. Trees even don't grow there. In the labor camp, there's no fence. Why do you think there's no fence there? There's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to run. It took them a while to get there. And because he was Seventh-day Adventist, they put him through quite a trial, because he requested his seventh day, but they just mocked it, and they put him through a lot of torture. But at the end, after all, they came to an agreement that, okay, we will allow you to carry water for 6 days, but you need to make sure that on Friday you have double amount of water, because on Sabbath you're not going to bring water to the camp. He had to go to a water source somewhere outside of the camp. And he had this ox, and ox had a personality. He would not cooperate. He would try to chase him as far as possible, as much as possible, and he would just barely drag himself. So the Friday came, and the man knew he's behind, and there is no way he's going to meet the quota. And then the miracle happened. That ox, by the invisible hand, was driven really fast. And in fact, men had to run after him, trying to catch up with that ox, you know, waiting when his second breath will kick in. And that's all day he would run, back and forth, back and forth. And within 1 day, he would get all the water they needed for the Sabbath. So, from 1 day to 2 days. And that would go on for how long do you think? 10 years. Every day they would witness this miracle, unexplainable, unexplicable from the common sense. And then after 10 years, he was among those who were able to survive his time in the concentration at labor camp, which is like a concentration camp. And then he was replaced by another prisoner who took his place. And when the prisoner started working, everything went basically okay until Friday, until Saturday. But then when the Saturday came, guess what happened? The ox would not move. Actually, it's on the YouTube. We saw actually a short video of that ox and the man. I don't know if you some of you have seen that. It's an amazing thing. And there is a book actually written about it. You can read more of the story. That biological rhythm is embedded can be embedded into us. And actually, if we look closely in the nature and even in the human being, we can see that there's a stem, there's a pattern that reflects the Sabbath, the creation. But that's a whole different conversation and topic. As we mentioned before, our mind can regulate the resistance to the disease. We either comply and just succumb to the disease, or we stay optimistic and positive, and our immune system actually is more efficient when we are more optimistic and we are more cheerful. Of course, it's not easy to do when you're getting sick or when you are sick. So we need to be objective. Sometimes we are subjective, especially when it comes to ourselves. Evaluation of my own thoughts, feelings, and so on. I'm basically thinking the right is what I'm thinking right. Well, what are the signs of poor emotional health? Sometimes we need kind of look at ourselves from a different perspective, from outside. Well, we may not like exercising. Of course, if I don't like exercising, even when I'm fine, that's not the criterion, right? So we have to be objective in that sense. So eating nutritious foods. Of course, if I'm not eating nutritious food when I'm in the normal condition, then I will be even more prone to something that is not nutritious, not healthy. And doing something productive, forget about that. I just want to do nothing. So that's a sign of a pure emotional health. Actually, it's pretty close to depression, you may say, right? And disease, physical disease can lead us into and bring us into the state of depression. So depression, anxiety, abuse of alcohol will follow, tobacco, other drugs, and people, of course, less willing to go to the church because they feel even more separated on one hand, and then they don't want to come and see all those healthy people there. Because I'm not really doing well right now, and I will feel even more this burning of my conscience there. So let me just kind of get over, and maybe I will come to the church later. Habitual negative thinking can lead to psychological disorders, anxiety, depression, panic attacks, phobias, due to pro-inflammatory cytokines. So my negative thoughts, they're not just negative thoughts, that kind of electrical impulses that are running through my central nervous system and through my nerves, but actually there are consequences that chemicals are produced that create inflammatory state in our body. So the drying of the bones is not just the words, it's the drying of the whole body. The person can basically wither away, and a lot of inflammation in the body is a good second stage for multiple diseases. So we don't want this problem. Is inflammation a good or bad?
Chronic.
Chronic. Well, we need inflammation as a response, acute response. If there is a problem, right? But when it drags on and on and on, and the inflammatory markers are elevated all the time, oh wow, babe, you better watch out. You better watch out. There can be a problem. You may be sitting on a time bomb. Sometimes we worry about things that don't even exist. They're saying that the scientists that I read somewhere, they're saying that what happens in our life, if we take 100% of what happens to our life, is out of that is actually 10% would actually take place in our life, your interactions with people, all the impacts on your body and mind, and it's only 10%. And the 90% of how we respond to it, how we take it, and how we learn to manage all those stresses and encounters and our daily duties and activities. So that's only, so there's 10% and 90%. So there's a dramatic impact that your mind can change in the life perception. Somebody may say, well, I'm an unhealthy person. Maybe I need some medication for it. Maybe I need something else. Well, before you do that, they noticed that the positive thinking actually encourages positive production of positive chemicals in your brain that will make you feel better. Some of them are endorphins are called. And when those are going up, then it's a little bit easier for you to kind of stay more positive. And so you can, instead of a vicious negative cycle when you go from bad to worse, you can go from good to better. Okay? So there is a way where we can exercise our will. So believing that I'm sick can make me sick. Period. Can make me sick. And that's a very serious condition. There was a man, I read about it some years ago, back in Soviet Union, that he's been in the hospital for how long do you think? A year. And he would constantly complain that something is wrong with him. And the doctors could not find anything wrong. And so they end up diagnosing him with hypochondria. The man is actually making up a disease in his mind. Can you believe how deceitful our mind can be? That it can actually make us believe that I'm sick. Well, some of you know about like phantom pain. The limb is not there, but you feel like it's still hurting. So just an example. And not only in physical sense, but also in psychological sense. There are people that they, for example, have certain beliefs and they think that they're communicating with God and God is telling them things, different things, and they believe they're coming from God. But they are not always coming from God. I remember there was another person I met, and that person would become anxious if there would be one night without revelation from God. Because that person would think that God withdrew himself. Is it a criterion? So does God speak every night to you? Even Ellen White wouldn't get revelation every night, right? So, and if something like that going on, if some strange beliefs come, and those people, they're sincere. They think that they're getting those impressions from God, but in reality, where they come from? They can be generated by your own mind, or they can come from the enemy, of course, or they can be, as I said, from our own mind. Because the heart of man is how deceitful it is. Extremely deceitful, right? Extremely deceitful. So it's not that easy to understand that. Well, let's look at some startup that people may get in their life and how that actually changing anatomy even of the brain can take place in response to the external stimuli. A group of Canadian scientists went to Romania after the collapse of the communism, and they did the study of the orphans in Romania, just to see how different is the brain of the orphans. Did you know that orphans actually can have they can have a different brain? There is a part in the brain that is called amygdala that is it is believed that it's involved in, especially it's involved in the response in crisis, or when the person is in jeopardy. There are certain programs written there that, for example, when you see a train coming toward you, there is no really time to think, right? What do you need to do? You don't even think, you just jump off the tracks. So this is just an example. And so imagine if the person is constantly under this, lives like in a war zone, because those orphanages, they're not like, sanatoriums where you feel like really relaxed. Not at all. Back in those, at least not in the country where I grew up, or I'm sure in Romania is the same way. There is a lot of pressure there, a lot of pressure. And so the children there, they live in the constant stress. They used to, at least, I don't know, maybe now it's better, in a constant stress. And so, to their amazement, they noticed that the amygdala that part of the brain that is responsible for this kind of responses is actually enlarged in those children. That's unbelievable. It's amazing. That I don't know if it would shrink back, if you put the child in a nice US family, or some Western European family, if it would feel relaxed and comfortable and eventually would shrink. I hope, though, they may need to do another follow-up study, adapt some of those children and compare them with what's going to happen in their mind. Wouldn't it be interesting study? Yes. So, but this is how the blessing of a Christian home can be for our children. They may grow with the advantage of having a balanced mind, not to have this kind of stuff. They will be overreacting in the situation, and they will responding with much more anger, anxiety, and so forth than a child that grew up with a sense of security and comfort. So it's important to give a good start. So we talked about that. Now, there is a center that in the brain that the scientists call pleasure center. There are different areas in the brain that are involved in the pleasure center, but this nucleus accumbens, what they call, is at least one of them. And there are many different chemicals that also involved in your sense of well-being. Okay? And in particularly, one of them is dopamine that is released into that nucleus accumbens and is connected with the what's called sense of pleasure. And the drugs, they also stimulate production of different chemicals, but they, no matter of their primary mode of action, they release the dopamine into this particular system. I won't go in all the details in terms of the hormones, how they, we could go a little more into it, but let's just focus only on this part, Now, we all want to feel good. I remember before I became Seventh-day Adventist, and I didn't really eat, I didn't eat right, and many things, weren't right. And I didn't know that the person can actually feel good. I thought kind of feeling like not really good is actually a normal thing. Well, now I know it's not true. And you actually can feel peace, you can feel yourself healthy, you can feel yourself, functional and happy and enjoy life, and you don't have to drive yourself. And is it normal for us to feel good and to to function well? Yes, that's good. And God put certain limits. He put certain limits to the way we can feel ourselves good. Well, guess what the enemy is trying to do? And our human nature, carnal nature, well, he's trying to push beyond the limits. Because basically, what's interesting for you and make you happy, not necessarily will make happy me, but we will actually perceive the sense of satisfaction largely through this nucleus accumbens, through this pleasure center. And so somebody, loves money, they make a chunk of money, they feel good. The next time, what? They want more, right? Mm-hmm. If somebody, likes food, they will go to, at a large extent, to satisfy themselves with food, and so on and so forth. You can go movies and many other things. Or it can be drugs. Drugs can also be involved. Gambling, poker machines, and so forth. And that whole industry is directed and programmed in such a way that to allow you to just win a little, just enough to win so that you would get sucked in. I remember I've seen, you would think that only kind of inexperienced young people will get into this trouble. I remember I saw how a person, in a sound mind, she was an elderly woman, but not like really old, and she was surrounded by these people that some sort of guessing was involved, where she would have to point at the right cup, which contained the ball on the, and so, and they would increase and increase and increase and increase of the amount of money. She had to go around to her home and to bring more money to match the amount. Can you imagine how far can people go with the belief that they are going to actually got the jackpot? So nothing could stop her, and of course, they allowed her just to be sucked in and up, and when they saw she has no more money to bring, she allowed her partner, the lady that was the one behind the movement of those caps, her partner who pretended to be just somebody from the street playing with her, to win, and he got all money. And you should have seen the expression on the face of the elderly woman. It's like she was hit by lightning. You know, what a lesson to learn. Well, as we mentioned, the drugs, they have different ways of making us feel good. Some of them actually increase the uptake of glucose. So the red area that you see is the area of the increase, the glucose uptake. So the person is really fired up, really fired. You know, like cocaine would do that. The people would just become talking and talking a lot. It's like they, instead of excitement. So, there are really serious changes in the mind. Now I wanted to bring another illustration with this pleasure center. The scientists, they inserted the electrode in the mind of rats. And with the slight electrical impulse, they would stimulate the nucleus accumbens. And they would feel good. Rats would still good. And then they went further. They basically learned how they could hit a pedal and that would trigger. Have you heard about this? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you heard that. But some of you probably didn't. And that would, again, would send electrical impulse and they would feel good. And there was a control group of rats, that means just without electrode and with electrode. So they had maze, you know, where they would get the food from, and then there was a pedal for the electrical impulse. So the normal rats, they would just go for the food and they would feel fine. The rats that with the electrode, once they quickly figure out that they can get that good feeling from the pedal, they would continue hitting and hitting, and they would end up hitting like every 5 seconds because it would take about 5 seconds for the sensation to kind of subside, and they would hit it another time. And again, as the subsiding hit, they forgot about food. They all died from starvation. Well, imagine how it can be. Well, why do you think is that? Well, the food gives us about a raise in the endorphins, about, you know, arguably between 15 and 30%. That makes us, a good meal really makes us feel good because, and you know, our brain has an increase of certain chemicals that makes us feel good. Well, cocaine will increase it by 500 times. 500%. So there is no way you would be able to compete with just a normal stimulant with something that the drug can give you. So 5 times versus just 0.35 times increase. So you have 5 times increase and 0.35. It can be so bad. I remember when we tried to adopt, you know, we were going through adoption at one point, and we ran into a family, a lady in her early 20s. She already had 2 children adopted, already taken, and 2 were going still through the adoption. Or was there already 4 adopted, taken?
4 already taken.
4 already were taken from her, and 2 more were going through the process. Okay, and she would come to the court. You know, she would say, "I love my children. I want to be with them," but she would fail the drug test overall, and the judge would, you know, be lenient and he would give you another 3 months extension. But she would come back and she would fail it again. Did she love the children?
Yes.
She did. But could she go against the addictions that she had? No, she could not resist them. Even the love of mother to her children would not stop her from doing that. Isn't it horrible? Today, doctors recognize addiction as a chronic disease that changes both brain structure and function. So the change can be in such a way that it stimulates us to certain compulsive behavior. By stimulating the release of natural opioids in the brain, sugar and fat would have a similar effect to addictive drugs such as heroin, according to John Hobbill, a psychologist at Princeton University in New Jersey. Even actually what they say that one dose of the junk food can hook a child up to it. It doesn't take long, doesn't take much. And junk food is addictive because it's what? It's a combination of salt, oil, sugar, spice. That's a powerful combination. You don't have to really wreck your brain how to make food tasty. Just put all these ingredients together and you satisfy those taste buds. So he fed rats a diet that was a quarter sugar. The rats were thrown into a state of anxiety when denied that sugar. What is the first drug that children get hooked up on? Sugar. Sweet tooth. Don't raise your hands. But some people actually have sweet tooth, and they tend to abuse sugar because sugar raises the level of serotonin, that's one hormone that also makes you feel good. So, and when we are talking about the impact of drugs or any addictive stimulus, there's a combination of there's dopamine, there's chemical, there's the intensity of it, the surge with the intensity of feeling it, and the reliability. You want the brain, you cannot deceive yourself. The brain knows exactly what is the shortcut for me to feel good. I don't want to go the long way. I don't want to work all day mowing grass, and then at the end when I'm really tired, I'll just lay down and look at that beautiful mown lawn, and I'll say, praise God. And then you will have this deep sense of satisfaction from the hard labor all day. This is old-fashioned, man. Today, the brain finds for us many shortcuts that will flood that nucleus accumbens. Let's just switch a little bit gears and talk about imagination. Imagination is actually critical for our faith. We are going actually largely not by sight, but by faith. And faith is when we see things that are not really there. We do not see many things that we know are there. And we have to exercise our imagination. Imagination. I remember Dr. Agatha Fresh, she actually had a presentation at one point, and she would actually it was faith is imagination. It was something like that. And it kind of stuck in my mind, the importance of it and significance of it really, because it's better one time to see than 100 times to hear. So what is going to affect you more? What you actually see, even in your brain. And that's what they say actually, that this research shown that things that we imagine as an experience have a similar effect upon our body, mental and physical responses if you have actually seen it in real life. So imagination can be actually equal in the effect to the things that you see in the real life. There is a close connection between meditation and sanctity. And daily meditation is the very lifeblood of the soul, because our faith depends on it. Let's read a few quotes, which I'm sure you're familiar with most of them, but it's good to refresh. it would be well for us to spend a thoughtful hour each day in contemplation of the life of Christ. You know, you can compare it with exercise. If I'm not exercising, sometimes we feel that we're still in a good shape. But it's only until you get like 25-pound or 50-pound bag and try to walk upstairs. That's when you quickly realize that I'm not really in a good shape. But we tend to be just like here. We think that we are all right, even if we're not following this principle. I'm just saying to somebody out there, should you do that, you follow this principle. But how do we do that? We should take it point by point and let the imagination grasp each thing, especially the closing ones. We should encourage a cheerful, thoughtful, peaceful frame of mind, for our health depends upon our so doing. By emphasizing positive and happy thoughts, we can, how else we can improve? Okay, well, thoughts is one thing. We can also do some dietary changes. We can avoid unnatural stimulants. We can limit the amount of sugar. Because it's like you will compare Bible reading and, let's say, video games. How interesting is going to be Bible after video games? It's going to be very boring because people will just fall asleep. So we have to kind of resensitize ourselves. And so we have to sometimes fast, not just physically, but we have to fast on certain things that make this, they bombard our brain to such an extent that it becomes desensitized and not interested in the spiritual things because they just make us to fall asleep. Here's a quote from the secular sources. Happy people are more resistant to colds, and according to a study in which subjects were deliberately infected with the virus. People who are depressed, nervous, or angry are 3 times more likely to get sick than those who are more energetic, happy, and relaxed. And so this is the research was conducted at Carnegie Mellon University. Again, the resistance. And then what is the role of the Christian recreation? To spend time away from this vicious cycle. Work, home, work, home, work, home. All who can should feel it a duty to pursue this course. Nothing will be lost but much gain. They can return to their occupation with new life and new courage to engage in their labor with zeal, and they are better prepared to resist disease. You know, actually when they did a study during the Second World War in England, they noticed that they would make these really long shifts. Really long shifts, they were like 12 and more hours shifts. And they would notice that people who would be on the shorter shifts, like 8 hours, they would be actually more productive than those who worked for over 12 hours. And they realized that, you know, there is a limit where actually you become counterproductive, even though you think, oh, let me just stay another hour. It's already, okay, it's 9 p.m., 10 p.m., let me stay another hour, and then I'll be done. But guess what? You will be actually less productive if you just go to bed and get up early. And it's hard because we need to get things done. So this is how the old-fashioned recreation, reward and satisfaction will. His desire rages. As we thus dwell upon his great sacrifice for us, our confidence in him will be more constant, our love will be quickened, and we shall be more deeply imbued with his spirit. So this is the importance of the meditation upon Christ, love of Christ. Now, we're talking about the character, and just to make it shorter, we know that when God created us in his image, he gave already certain personality to Adam. You know, he had already certain flow of thoughts. He didn't like learn like a baby, everything from scratch. Adam already had certain personality. Whose personality? Yeah, yeah. He reflected the character of God. Well, there are two. There is an important aspect here that we read about character from Maranatha, page 301. About the importance of the personal identity. Why it's all important? Because we are talking about the mind and where's the identity is hidden, where's our character is hidden. It's based on our mind. That's who we are. So now we're bringing to the climax, so to say, where it's all going. Why is this great controversy going on over our mind? Well, because the enemy, he doesn't want you to reflect what is written here. The personal identity is preserved in the resurrection. We're not going to be different there in terms of our character, in terms of our habits, and so forth. Though not the same particles of matter or material substance as went into the grave, the wondrous works of God and mystery of man. The spirit, the character of man is returned to God, there to be preserved. In the resurrection, every man will have his own character. God, in his own time, will call forth the dead, giving again the breath of life, and bidding the dry bones live. The same form will come forth, but it will be free from disease and every defect. It lives again, bearing the same individuality on features, so that friend will recognize friend.
Amen.
So we won't have to be acquainted with each other. So you're a different person. No, I recognize you. God wants really us to be predictable, because what our human nature, fallen nature, does to us, it's trying to make us unpredictable, so to say, even for ourselves, or predictable in a negative sense. God wants us to be predictable in a good sense. He wants to know that he can trust you for indefinitely to have a room where you have with you in a place where there will be no night there in that city. And guess what? You will be always day in that city, but it will not affect your circadian rhythm. You will be able to enjoy that time and spend that time with him throughout eternity. So, by beholding Christ, by talking of him, by beholding the loveliness of his character, we become changed from glory to glory. And what is glory? Character. And he becomes changed from character to character. Thus we see that there is a work of purification that goes on by beholding Jesus from sons and daughters of God. John says in chapter 11, Jesus says unto her, Mother, Maria, said I not unto thee, that if thou wouldest believe, thou shalt see the glory of God. Now we're going really right now to the climax of what we're talking about. Okay, this is a good thing, to reflect the character of God. That's a glorious thing to do. But there is another aspect of God's glory I'm really looking forward to, and I'm sure you too. And you know what it is? You want to see what the glory of God is? What Jesus said to her? And he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth. That's another aspect of the glory of God, because only God can resurrect people. And his glory is manifested as a life giver, because he gives the resurrection. So these are two aspects. If I'm not reflecting God's glory in my character, then his glory will pass by me in the resurrection. Isn't that thought to think of? Galatians 2:20, I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. So we have learned how to put our troubles and worries into God's hands. Turn away my eyes from looking at vanity and revive me in your ways, says Psalmist. So he recognizes here his need to do away with vanity, but he needs God's help for that. We can't do it on our own. Let's read a few more verses. And besides this, from 2 Peter chapter 1, give all diligence, add to your faith virtue. Virtue is a moral goodness, and to virtue, knowledge about good things, here he implies. And to knowledge, temperance, and to temperance, patience, and to patience, godliness, and to godliness, brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness, charity. And what are the morals in the Bible? You know, in the secular understanding, morals is your responsibility before the society. You have to really follow certain responsibilities and maintain certain standards that in the society. But when it comes to the Bible, when it comes to God, is the morals are the abhorring evil and liking the good. This is what God wants us in terms of the reflection of His law. How we can reflect His law. It should become natural for us to abhor evil and to love good. 1 Corinthians 15:33. Be not deceived. Evil communications corrupt good manners. Or in another translation, do not deceive. Bad company ruins good morals. Sometimes we tend to blame, oh, it's just, I did not get into the right environment. If I just get in the right environment, then things would be changed. Well, why did I get into that wrong environment in the first place? You know, we have to, like if somebody would see, let's say, 100-pound weight, and then they would see 150-pound weight, and then they would see 200-pound weight, you know, you should understand, you cannot really pull 200-pound weights. But nevertheless, we go and we try. We put ourselves in the situation where we know we should not be. And we have known and believed the love that God has to us. God is love. And he that dwelleth in love dwelleth in God, and God in him. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth all fear. For the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men, teaching us that denying ungodliness and worldly lusts, we should live how? Soberly, righteously, and godly in this present world. And the last slide from Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Well, there is even a scripture song. Did you hear a scripture song about it? Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path.
Amen.
May God bless you.
Amen.
Shall we? Our Heavenly Father, we're so grateful that you're teaching us to trust you. We really want to trust you. We want you to be the guide of our life, to be protector of our souls, and the supplier of all our needs. So we ask you, please, conform our minds into the likeness of Christ, because as a loving Father, you want to preserve our good identity, and yet you want to purify us from anything that will harm us in the life here, and would bar us from the eternity. Thank you for your love unto us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Can we have another amen for Brother Andre?
Amen.
That was a beautiful message on the connection between the mind and body. We're very thankful for having you. We love for you to come again. Man, I pray that it be well with each and every one of you, with your souls. Let's bow our head as we prepare to be dismissed. Dear Father, Lord, we thank you for this assembly of saints. We thank you that we have a gospel message, Lord, that has a right arm connected to it, Lord. and that we're told it's the entering wedge, Lord. We understand that as we look at this darkest hour in Earth's history, Lord, you're calling your people to stand out, to go forward with their distinctive message that you have entrusted with them to share with the dying world. And Lord, as we prepare to be dismissed from your presence, from this place, Lord, dismiss us never from your presence. It's our prayer in the wonderful name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and our Savior. Amen.
Amen.